Hello everybody and welcome to once again another episode of the All-CAW Wrestling podcast video type thing. I'm the Big Daddy D, joined here by at the podcasting table by...
The little Natty new.
Hello little Natty new.
Hi.
Hi. So, what have you been watching on the network this week?
I've been watching SummerSlam 88.
Ooh, the Mega Powers versus the Mega Bucks, eh?
Rebellion 2001.
Oh right, what made you watch that?
Because it was on the YouTube top 10 videos with the Europe matches.
Very interesting. We've also been watching NXT Rival. Some fantastic matches between Finn Balor and Adrian Neville, Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, and the women's match. Absolutely fantastic. Charlotte versus Sasha Banks versus Bayley versus Becky Lynch. Absolutely brilliant stuff. But we've also been delving back into the 80s, as we tend to do here on the podcast. Now, following on from our last episode where we looked at WrestleMania 2, we're now delving into 1987 to take a look at WrestleMania 3. So we're here, it's 29th of March 1987, and we're at a sold-out Silverdome in Detroit. Silverdome.
Yeah.
Isn't that right, Hogan? Even today, it's a sight to behold, and even though the attendance figure of 93,173, where's that free come from, has been debated before in the past, you can't deny that at the time, this was the biggest spectacle in wrestling history. So, after Aretha Franklin, that's how you pronounce it, isn't it? Sings the national anthem for what feels like 10 bloody minutes. We're introduced to the commentating team of Gorilla Monsoon and Jesse the Body Ventura. Thankfully, Vince McMahon has learnt his lesson from WrestleMania 2 and hasn't filled the commentating with celebrities this year. Uh-oh. Hey, now that's what I've come to see. Elvira wants to see some schlong. Anyway, having said that, Mr. Baseball, Bob Ecker, and Mary Hart popped into the commentating booth for a couple of matches, and to be honest, they weren't too bad. They were also handling the backstage interviews during the night, and Ecker was also the guest ring announcer. So, blimey, Vince got his money's worth out of him, didn't he? But Ecker clearly enjoyed being there, and actually came back for WrestleMania 4 the following year, leading to a famous backstage segment where Andre appeared to be choking him, a clip that would be repeated for years to come.
Hey, well, you mind getting your foot off my shoulder?
Something that's it. That's the one with Bob Ecker. That's it. And it sort of chokes Bob Ecker. Yes, Bobby the Brain Heenan popped into the commentating booth during one match, mostly to have an angry rant. But it's here that we get our first glimpse of the brilliant commentating team that Monsoon and Heenan would become later on. So, first up, we've got the Magnificent One, Don Morocco, and Cowboy Bob Orton, teaming up to take on the Can-Am Connection. Now, the Can-Am Connection consists of the man who would later become the Model, Rick Martel, and the man who would later become known as the Z-Man in WCW, Tom Zenk. Now, clearly the WWF had major plans for the Can-Am Connection, perhaps wanting to put together another popular team of babyfaces to go up against the Bulldogs and the Hearts. It certainly helped that both Martel and Zenk were good-looking blokes. However, this would be the first and last time that we'd see Tom Zenk at a WrestleMania, as he would leave the company shortly afterwards due to a pay dispute in the summer of 1987, whilst the Connection were involved in a feud with the Islanders, Haku and Tama. To this day, Zenk and Martel have different opinions on the matter exactly why Zenk left the WWF, which pretty much closed the door on a Can-Am Connection reunion ever taking place. Instead, Tito Santana and Martel were put together to form the new tag team Strike Force, who would actually go on to become tag team champions later on in the year, before splitting up and feuding between themselves. But that's a story.
For next time.
For another time. We could turn that into a catchphrase, couldn't we?
But that's a story for another time.
Yes. Oh, we could make that into a t-shirt, maybe. Zenk and Martel start off with some nice double team moves. Zenk and Orton trade full Nelsons, which is a terrible idea considering the next match after this. Morocco accidentally back body drops Orton. The faces hit a Rock and Roll Express like double drop kick on Morocco. Martel hits a running cross body on Morocco, and Morocco gets schoolboyed by Zenk, allowing Martel to pick up the pinfall. Good match to kick off this event, with the crowd really getting into this. This match would also lead on to more problems between the team of Muraco and Orton, which would lead to Muraco turning babyface before the end of the year, which we'll see at the pay-per-view after this, Survivor Series, 1987.
Which I've seen.
Which, yes, but that will be our next podcast that will cover that in. I should point out, this WrestleMania is the one that's got the little motorised carts made to look like miniature wrestling rings. And they're like on a sort of like a little truck, isn't there? And basically the wrestlers get driven down to the ring in these little rings. Obviously the walk down was going to be too much for guys like Andre and King Kong Bundy, but I'd quite like to see those mini ring carts returning to WrestleMania one day. What do you think?
Yeah, that'd be good. Mhm.
You know, because Big Show's not getting any older, not getting any younger, is he? So, next up, and this is why having Zenk and Orton trading full Nelsons at the start was a bad idea, we have the Full Nelson Challenge match between Hercules and Billy Jack Haynes. Now, this feud kicked off because Hercules started using Haynes' finisher in his matches, which was the Full Nelson. Keep up. Yes, as you might have guessed, it was the Full Nelson. So, long before Chris Masters came onto the scene, this submission move used to be kind of a big deal. The match was basically 8 minutes of two heavily bearded chaps trying to get behind each other in order to slap this move on, whilst Hayes did an excessive amount of dribbling. Nice. In fact, they were so obsessed with trying to slap this move on each other that the two of them actually ended up getting counted out on the outside of the ring. After the match, Herc wrapped his chain around his fist and smacked Hayes in the head with it several times, busting him open. And then, amusingly enough, he almost falls off the cart on the way back. The two of them would continue to feud over the next few months in a number of chain matches, as well as Haynes teaming up with Ken Patera to feud against Hercules and Harley Race, and later against Demolition. But Haynes would leave the WWF soon after this, and would later try to sue the WWE for damages, claiming that his match with Hercules at WrestleMania 3 led to him contracting hepatitis C. He also filed a lawsuit against WWE for failing to protect its talent against traumatic brain injuries, with Haynes using the Chris Benoit double murder-suicide case as his prime example. The case is actually still ongoing at the time of recording this podcast. So next up, it's time to bring on the midgets, as Hillbilly Jim teams up with Little Beaver and the Haiti Kid, who was last seen looking like a mini-me Mr. T, to take on King Kong Bundy, with Lord Littlebrook and Little Tokyo. Wow, talk about a decline for Bundy. He gets the fastest victory in WrestleMania history at the first event. By the time we get to the second annual Mania, he's in the main event facing Hogan for the title. The year after that, he's fighting midgets.
I know, right?
That's a bit of a decline, wouldn't you say? In fact, the only other guy that can hold a claim for quickest WrestleMania decline would be The Miz, who main evented WrestleMania one year, and then the following year had been moved all the way down to the six-man Money in the Bank match, which included a moment where he landed awkwardly and it looked like his kneecap popped out. Actually popped out into the third row. Earl Hebner was later seen trying to flog it in the car park after the show. We get some midget double teaming to start off with, and by the way, that's not me being politically incorrect, they did refer to them as midgets throughout the match. Yes. Bundy and Jim get tagged to wrestle with each other, but Little Beaver keeps taking cheap shots on Bundy. Hey, pick on somebody your own size. You could almost say that there's beaver all over the place. Bundy eventually gets peeved off with this and ends up flattening Beaver the first chance he gets alone with him.
Midget abuse!
But all this does is end up turning his own partners against him, as the three other midgets get in the ring and start beating him up. Dear God. I'm not too sure who wins this, but Hillbilly Jim ends up leaving the ring with all four midgets, whilst carrying poor Little Beaver over his shoulder. Blimey, that sounds like the start of a joke, doesn't it? A hillbilly and four midgets go into a bar. Anyway, lesson learnt in this match, don't trust midgets. They'll either take cheap shots at you, or they'll turn on you. Bundy squashing Beaver was really the only memorable part of this. Although this match does make me think that we need to have a midget match at this year's WrestleMania.
Hornswoggle versus El Torito.
No, Little Boogeyman, Hornswoggle, and El Torito in a freeway dance.
Little Boogeyman.
Oh yeah, Boogeyman had at one point a little midget version of him. Little Boogeyman, Hornswoggle, and El Torito in a freeway dance.
El Torito and Hornswoggle actually had like a proper match, and El Torito put Hornswoggle through a mini table.
Oh yes, that was WLC, wasn't it? Anyway, next up, we get the WrestleMania debut of handsome Harley Race, who came into the WWF during 1986, where upon this, he was instantly rechristened as The King Harley Race, leading to a feud with the Junkyard Dog, as Race had demanded that the dog bowed before him, like he should.
That's not racist.
Yes. Race is accompanied to the ring by Bobby Heenan and WWF Women's Champion, the Fabulous Moolah. Yes, she's still the champion at this point.
What the fuck?
Race bumps around all over the ring like a pinball for JYD to make this match somewhat entertaining. Jimmy Hart distracts JYD to give Race time to recover. When Dog turns round, he goes straight into a nice belly-to-belly suplex from Race for the pinfall. That was pretty much the only move that Race did in the match. Harley looked pretty much past his prime here, but despite that, he was still a better worker than most wrestlers in the company. I actually feel that Race could have had a much better match with Tito Santana. So he'd still be playing out that ever so slightly racist card in the storyline, but at least if he was up against Tito, he'd have a better match than this at least, anyway. Well, anyway, the stipulation was that the loser would have to bow before their opponent. So after the match, JYD bows to the King, but then attacks him and walks out with his robe. Next up, it's the Dream Team against the fabulous Rougeaus brothers. The Dream Team, consisting of Greg Valentine and Brutus Beefcake, had the best match of the night at last year's WrestleMania against the British Bulldogs. And yes, that will be the only time you can say that about a match featuring Ed Leslie. The Rougeaus consist of brothers Raymond and Jacques, who would later become the Mountie. I am the Mountie! Wait till you see the Mountie. He has the most epic theme song. I'm the Mountie. I'm handsome. I'm brave. I'm strong. I'm the... Yeah, okay, you're just giving me a look now. Anyway, you'll see the Mountie crop up later on. But at the moment, he's just plain old Jacques Rougeau. Anyway, the brothers hit some good double team moves, in particular their finisher, which looks like a top rope Lou Fres press. But then Dino Bravo runs in and gets involved whilst the referee's distracted, leading to the Dream Team picking up the victory. Now, despite being a heel, Beefcake is not happy that Bravo got involved in the match, leading to a falling out and his partners walking out without him. They actually get on the little motorised miniature ring and just drive off without him. The match itself wasn't particularly memorable, but it does lead to Beefcake turning babyface and the new Dream Team of Valentine and Bravo being created. And now we get Rowdy Roddy Piper's last match ever. Well, until his next one, of course. As he states that, win, lose or draw against adorable Adrian Adonis, he will retire afterwards. Since last year's Mania, Piper has now turned full-on babyface, but he still wasn't afraid to act like a heel during the match, as he takes his leather belt off and whacks Adonis with it. Bear in mind, this is a full decade before Hogan started doing it. Adonis would return the favour though, whacking Piper back by taking the belt off him. This match was pretty ahead of its time, as Piper and Adonis were doing spots that would be copied hundreds of times in the future. At this point in his career, Adonis was at his absolute worst for being out of shape, but he could still put on a good match. As we mentioned in one of our previous podcasts, Vince McMahon was not very happy at the amount of weight that Adrian Adonis was putting on, so he decided to turn him gay as punishment. Jimmy Hart tries to get involved, but Piper throws him around the ring as well. Jimmy would continue to get involved during the course of the match, probably just as much as the wrestlers. This is something that continues throughout the night with all of Jimmy Hart's wrestlers. I think it's safe to say that Jimmy gets a bit of a kick-in at this particular WrestleMania.
Yeah.
Adonis slaps the sleeper hold on Piper, whilst Jimmy's jumping around outside the ring with a pair of hedge clippers in his hand. That doesn't sound safe to me.
No.
Adonis thinks he's won the match as Piper appears to be unconscious, so he lets go of the submission. Out from the back comes Brutus Beefcake to wake Piper up, so it looks like Beefcake is now a babyface. Beefcake chases Hart out of the ring. Adonis grabs the clippers to hit Piper, but Piper moves out of the way. Then we get the classic Rock versus Kurt Angle spot of hitting the top rope with the chair and then the chair hits him in the face. Well, that spot is done here, but with the hedge clippers.
Ow.
Now, That could have been a very, very nasty botch if Adonis hadn't been careful. Anyway, that allows Piper to lock in his own sleeper hold and put Adonis to sleep to win the match. Post-match has Piper standing on Jimmy Hart's back whilst Brutus shaves Adonis's head. This was sports entertainment at its best. Very little wrestling, but such a fun show. As far as what happens after this event, Adonis would stick around with the WWF for a few more months before heading back to the AWA. He'd join up with Paul E. Dangerously, now known as Paul Heyman, and become part of the Dangerous Alliance. Sadly, Adonis would die a year and a half after this event in a car crash. Brutus Beefcake went into the show as a heel tag team wrestler. He would leave as a babyface and would now have the gimmick that would make him one of the most over babyfaces in the company. In addition to that, he now had a brand new finisher, the Sleeper. And of course his gimmick, Brutus the Barber Beefcake. As for Piper, this would end up being his last match ever. Until his next one, of course. Within the next year, Piper would focus more on his acting career, including John Carpenter's They Live, which is well worth a watch. And it's where the catchphrase, "I am here to kick ass and chew bubblegum," came from. I know it's been copied sort of years and years, afterwards, like on Duke Nukem and things like that, but that is where it originated from. Speaking of wrestlers being in movies that aren't shit, Jesse Ventura also took the time during WrestleMania 3 to promote Predator, which he starred in. Now, considering that WWE now plugs such movies these days like See No Evil, The Marine, 12 Rounds, and Jingle All the Way 2, I feel that the quality of films have declined somewhat.
Yes.
We've gone from They Live and Predator to, Jingle All the Way 2. Enough said. Next up, it's six-man tag team action as the British Bulldogs team up with Tito Santana to take on the Hart Foundation and Dangerous Danny Davis. Davis used to be a referee for the WWF, but it turned out that he was a crooked one. Ooh, naughty. Back in early 1986, he was the assigned referee for the Tito Santana vs Randy Savage match for the Intercontinental title in the Boston Garden. This was the match where Savage cheated to win the belt, or rather stole the belt, as far as Gorilla Monsoon was concerned. Jump ahead to early 1987, and the Bulldogs were defending their tag team titles against the Hearts. However, since Dynamite Kid was injured for real, there was the storyline where they would controversially start the match, even though Dynamite had been attacked before the match and he was clearly out cold for practically the whole match. The Hearts ended up winning the match, becoming new tag team champions, but it then turned out that Davis had been working for them all along. Because of this, WWF President Jack Tunney suspended Davis for life as a referee. So, the Hearts trained Davis to be a wrestler instead. Since Dynamite was still hurt, this extended rivalry was turned into a six-man tag, so he didn't have to do much. Davis does the typically cowardly heel character, where he only gets in the ring if the legal man is down on the mat. Santana manages to get hold of Davis eventually, and he beats the shit out of him. Tag to Davey Boy, who practically kills Davis with a frigging tombstone pile driver,
Yes.
a suplex, and then his huge running power slam. Tombstone pile driver. We're seeing it here being used before The Undertaker. But the pin attempt then gets broken up by Neidhart, and it leads to all six men jumping in the ring to have a big brawl. In all the commotion, Jimmy Hart throws in the megaphone to Davis, who clonks Davey Boy over the bonds with it to get the win for his team. A surprising finish considering that the tag team titles weren't on the line. Good booking throughout the match though. They worked around Dynamite's injury. I just feel that had he been healthy and well enough to compete in a proper match, we could have gotten ourselves another Bulldog versus Hearts match. This would have stolen the show in my opinion and made this event a huge free match card that people would remember. But for what it was good. And it's always great to see the tombstone being used before Taker did it. I never realised that this was a move that existed before him. I thought that this move had been invented by The Undertaker for him to use. But it just turned out that this had been a move that had existed for a while and, well, Taker's character was just the perfect fit for it. Santana also gets involved in the next match afterwards, which was nothing more than a piss break, really, as Butch Reed, along with his manager, the Doctor of Style, Slick, makes short work of Koko Beware. Santana then runs in after the match to attack Reed and to, tear off Slick's clothes.
That's not gay.
What? Apparently these two had been feuding before the pay-per-view, with Styx's cane being used to hurt Santana. Had Dynamite been healthy, I guess we would have seen Bulldogs versus Hearts and Santana versus Reed. And we wouldn't have seen the sight of Santana stripping Slick's clothes off. See, this is why Santana's in the Hall of Fame. It wouldn't have mattered who you'd put him in the ring with. If you'd have put him in the ring with Harley Race, like we suggested earlier, if you'd put him in the ring against Butch Reed, or if you put him in there against the Hearts, you were still guaranteed to have a good match. I still think Santana versus Race would have been a fantastic match, though. So next up, and this is one that I know that you'll be quite fond of, is Macho Man Randy Savage with Miss Elizabeth defending the Intercontinental title against Ricky the Dragon Steamboat with George the Animal Steel in his corner. Now this feud started in a televised IC title match where Savage had used the guardrail and the ring bell to injure Steamboat's throat. Meanwhile, Savage had been feuding with Steel ever since last year's Mania over Elizabeth. Now, if you want to know what happens in this match, do yourself a favour and just watch it. It comes highly, highly recommended, just so ahead of its time. But just to give you a quick summary, the match starts off slow with both men being thrown out of the ring a lot. Savage tries to re-injure the throat of Steamboat. Near the end, after a near record amount of 2 counts, there's a ref bump, which Savage then uses as a chance to get the ring bell again to try and hurt Steamboat again exactly as he did before. George Steele grabs the bell, but Savage kicks him to get it back. Steele pushes Savage off the top rope. The ref recovers to see Savage getting up to body slam Steamboat, but Steamboat rolls through with a small package. With that, Ricky is the new IC champion. This match really needs to be watched by all fans who want to be a wrestler. It really shows that you don't need an hour to put on a wrestling classic. This match was just a perfect blend of backstory, psychology, exciting near falls, and a creative finish at the time. A goal of the match shouldn't be to make it long. You should go out there, do everything you need to do, and get out. This match wasn't supposed to be the huge hit it became, but through the course of the match, Savage and Steamboat just sucked the fans into the match. As a result, this is easily the second biggest match from this show. The only bad thing about all this, with such a huge match, it overshadows everything else that Steamboat did during his run with the WWF. This guy had a great IC title feud with Greg Valentine and a ruthless feud with Don Muraco prior to the Savage Classic. And he also had a fantastic feud with Jake the Snake Roberts as well, during which Roberts actually DDT'd Steamboat on the concrete floor in front of Steamboat's wife, legitimately knocking him out and giving him a concussion. Jake didn't want to do it. He didn't want to do the DDT on the concrete because he had so much respect for Steamboat. But Steamboat said, no, it'd be fine, I'll make sure I don't get hurt. But unfortunately, he was legitimately knocked out from that. Later on in their feud, because you know Jake the Snake brought out that huge python down to the ring with him,
Yeah.
Steamboat would sort of counteract that by bringing a kimono dragon down to the ring. Yeah, seriously. So yeah, those matches are definitely worth checking out as well. So Savage versus Steamboat, it's a match that any fan needs to see, and it's one of the matches that you can play on in WWE 2K14.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on that, little Natty No?
Very good.
No, the playing it on 2K14.
Oh, okay. Well, you don't actually have to follow exactly what happens. And George Steele isn't in the game for some reason.
No, he's not. No. But you play Steamboat and you have to beat Savage, don't you?
Yeah.
And Savage is quite a difficult opponent to beat in the game, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, as he should be. So now, the award to the two most unlucky guys goes to Jake Roberts and the Honky Tonk Man. Why? Because those two now have to come on after the Savage versus Steamboat match. This was actually an important feud for both men. Both of them came into the WWF in 1986, with Jake making his first WrestleMania appearance at WrestleMania 2. Jake was a heel at the time, whilst the Honky Tonk Man, believe it or not, was a babyface.
Yeah.
Oh yes. Jake had a fantastic rivalry with Ricky Steamboat following his WrestleMania 2 match, as we've just mentioned now. He also feuded with Savage over his IC belt, and even with Hulk Hogan at one point. Although his upcoming feud with Hogan was quietly cancelled when more people actually started chanting for the DDT than for Hogan. So the WWF decided that Roberts should be turned babyface and began a feud with the Honky Tonk Man, who was now just being turned heel. The feud started on Jake's talk show, The Snake Pit, where the Honky Tonk Man smashed a guitar over the head of Roberts. The problem was, this wasn't a balsa wood guitar like the type that Jeff Jarrett obviously buys in bulk. As Bret Hart stated in his book, the Honky Tonk Man's guitar shot legitimately injured Roberts' neck, as it occurred before the use of guitars which were gimmicked to break easily. Honky Tonk Man denies that he legitimately injured Roberts, although footage of the incident certainly suggests otherwise. To even the odds, as if having a big old snake in your corner wasn't enough, Jake brings in Detroit's own Alice Cooper, another known lover of snakes. There was mostly a lot of punching going on in the match, and maybe because of the Savage vs Steamboat match being on previously, it was a little hard to get into this one. You can blame the bad placement on the card for this. The end comes when Jake goes for the DDT, but Jimmy Hart interferes, causing the distraction, and Honky Tonk Man wins with a schoolboy pin. Post-match has Jake and Cooper harassing Hart with Damien, the big old snake. Granted, the WWF didn't think that Savage vs Steamboat would be as good as this, but putting on this match afterwards, an important feud, wasn't a very good idea. It pretty much killed off whatever greatness there could have been. Roberts and Honky Tonk Man would feud again in the future, with the plan being for Jake to win the IC belt off the Honky Tonk Man shortly after his win over Steamboat for the belt. Jake would then begin an angle with the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. But because of the injuries from the guitar shot, the decision was made to keep the belt with the Honky Tonk Man. And he kept it for an awfully long time, didn't he?
Yeah.
Until he lost it to...
Ultimate Warrior.
Ultimate Warrior, which you've just been watching SummerSlam 88, haven't we? But we'll get on to that another time, because that's a story...
For another time.
Indeed. So next up, it's Nikolai Volkoff and the Iron Sheik, who are now being managed by Slick instead of Freddie Blassie. Slick, by the way, has still got his clothes in tatters. And they're taking on the Killer Bees. Watch your ass, B. Brian Blair! As expected, Volkoff wants to sing the Russian national anthem. But that causes Hacksaw Jim Duggan to come running out to the ring and chasing off the heels. Duggan said he doesn't like hearing the Russian national anthem, and then goes on to say that this is the land of the free and the home of the brave. Fair enough. But if this is the land of the free, why can't Volkoff be allowed to sing his bloody song? At the end of the match, the Sheik locks in the camel clutch on Jumping Jim Brunzell. In his infamous shoot interview, Sheik says that Blair was lucky that he didn't fuck him in the ass and make him humble. Problem was, he never actually did the camel clutch to Blair. He was doing it to Brunzell. Duggan, for no real reason, chases Slick and Volkoff around the ring with his 2x4. Volkoff rolls in the ring and Duggan follows. Duggan notices that the camel clutch is in place, so he decides to twat the Sheik with his 2x4, drawing the DQ. Ugh. None of Duggan's actions made any sense whatsoever, and it just made him look like a complete and utter moron. Sadly, Duggan really drags this match down. Had he not been involved at all, this would have been a nice little unknown gem of a WrestleMania match. But with him involved, it's a disappointing match with a terrible finish. And then finally, we've got the big one. It's Hulk Hogan defending the WWF World title against Andre the Giant. This feud began years ago, as Hogan and Andre were once best friends. Oh yes. Bobby Heenan had been using his own men like King Kong Bundy and Big John Studd to beat Andre and to try to take Hulk Hogan's WWF title away from him. When none of this worked, Heenan decided to turn Andre and Hogan against each other, talking in Andre's ear, saying how he wasn't getting the respect he deserved. Finally, when Andre won an award and Hogan was out doing all the talking, Andre left Piper's Pit, where the award was being presented. The next week he returned to Piper's Pit with Bobby Heenan to challenge Hogan, ripping the crucifix from Hogan's neck. So the match starts off with Hogan hitting a few punches and goes for a body slam straight away, but he's unable to lift him and Andre falls on top of him, getting a very long, very dubious 2 count. On commentary, Jesse Ventura thinks that Andre's won the match already. That moment would be aired again throughout the end of the year and into 1988, with Heenan claiming that Andre did win at this point and thus deserved a rematch. But we'll come on to that
another time.
Hogan sells his back for the rest of the match. Andre does the unthinkable and is in total control for most of the match. Even more impressive is that Andre doesn't even look like he's trying. Will Hulkamania finally die? On the outside, Andre misses a headbutt and ends up twatting the ring post of his own head. Hogan uses that time to pull back the mats on the outside, revealing the solid steel, concrete, wooden floor underneath.
Mm-hmm.
Hogan then tries to pile drive Andre onto the wood. Jesus Christ. But Hogan, to no surprise, is unable to do so, mainly because of his injured back, and also because, Andre's like about 500 bloody pounds. Back inside, Andre locks in a bear hug. Hogan looks completely out of it. The referee brings his arm up. It drops. 1. The referee brings the arm up again and it drops. 2. The ref repeats and the arm drops once again. 3. Wait, 3? Shit. The ref raises Hogan's arm up one last time, hoping that Hogan suddenly remembers how to fucking count, and Hogan doesn't let it fall this time. Oops. Botch. Hulk starts hulking up and clotheslines Andre, sending the giant down onto the mat for the first time in this match. Hogan feeds off the energy of the capacity crowd and uses the spirit bomb to defeat Andre once and for all.
Say what now?
He body slams Andre the Giant. Yeah. Just a slight little thing. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but apparently, yeah, he body slammed Andre the Giant. Obviously he's never talked about it since, Hulk then leg drops Andre and pins him for the victory. For 3 years, Hogan has never taken such a punishment. This was the ultimate superhuman comeback, which really launched Hogan into godlike superstardom, and it's what made him truly immortal. While Steamboat vs Savage is the 5-star classic for the wrestling crowd, this was the 5-star classic for the sports entertainment crowd. Sometimes it's not about how many moves you do or whatever, it's about creating a moment which hooks the fans for the entire time, and this match does just that. This match would also be the first true WrestleMania level main event. More importantly, it's the perfect ending to an incredible WrestleMania. This wouldn't be the end of the Hogan vs Andre feud, as following the replays of the near free count in the first couple of minutes of their WrestleMania 3 match, Andre would get a rematch on February the 5th, 1988, and defeated Hogan for the belt in controversial fashion. It was revealed that the appointed referee for this match, Dave Hebner, had been detained backstage, and a replacement referee paid by Ted DiBiase made the free count on Hogan while his shoulders were off the mat. What made this even more bizarre is that the replacement referee looked exactly like Dave Hebner, leading Hogan to accusing him of having been paid by Ted DiBiase to get plastic surgery to look just like Dave. But in fact it was revealed to be his own evil twin brother, Earl Hebner. No, I'm not making this up.
You're being serious now.
I am being serious.
Are you sure it wasn't just...
He had an evil twin brother who was no doubt flogging merchandise in the car park around about the same time as well. Following this debacle, Andre then sold the WWF title to Ted DiBiase. This was disallowed by WWF, and so President Jack Tunney declared the title vacant, setting up a tournament to crown the new champion at WrestleMania 4. But
that's a story for another time.
Yes. So overall, this show has one of the greatest matches in WWF history, along with the biggest match in WWF history. Everything else is just a bonus. This was the first WrestleMania where they really put effort into making it be about feuds instead of half random matches. Even the time fillers and the piss breaks have got something of value in them. Whether it was a face turn or setting up a face turn or some outside interference intended to create a new feud, there isn't a single match on the card that doesn't have some meaning. Granted, there were some disappointments, such as Butch Reed vs Koko Beware, or that terrible finish of the last tag match. But you do get 2 insanely great matches, and a few other good ones, and this makes it more than passable. So, Little Natty New, best match of the night for you?
Savage vs Steamboat.
Savage vs Steamboat, I've got to agree with you there. Obviously, Hogan Andre was epic for its time, but the one that I sort of keep coming back to over and over again is Savage vs Steamboat. So that is it for another episode of the All-CAW Wrestling podcast type thing, where we take a look at the WWE Network. Next time we're going to continue on to 1987. It's going to be Thanksgiving. It's the 26th of November 1987. And it's going to be when the WWF hold their first ever Survivor Series event.
Now, interestingly enough, on the same night that they do Survivor Series, WCW, still under the NWA banner, was doing Starrcade. Now, there have been a number of Starrcade events, but these were on closed-circuit television. This is like the first time that they're doing a pay-per-view, so it's like a big night for them. But of course, Vince McMahon said to a lot of these sort of cable TV companies, it's like, look, if you show Starrcade and not Survivor Series, I won't let you show WrestleMania 4. And considering that WrestleMania 3 had been a huge success, it was like a huge bargaining chip to work with. So most people ended up airing Survivor Series and not Starrcade. It was kind of like the first shot being fired in the WWE versus WCW war. I mean, it's entirely up to you, little Natty. Are you wanting to just cover just purely WWE pay-per-views in this podcast, or would you like to take a look at some WCW ones as well?
Depends.
Well, I'll tell you what. We'll go away, folks, and we'll watch. Well, we've already watched Survivor Series 1987 prior to this. We'll go off and we'll watch Starrcade 87, and if we feel that it's good, if we feel that the two events need comparing, then we might even review them both together, side by side. If not, we might just review them separately, or we might just review Survivor Series. Well, we're definitely doing Survivor Series anyway. So come back for that. In our next podcast show, we will take a look at Survivor Series 1987, the first ever annual Survivor Series, and we might have a look at Starrcade 87 as well. But until then, my name is the Big Daddy D.
My name is Little Natty,
and we're signing out for another episode of the All-CAW Wrestling podcast video type thing. Bye!
Goodbye.